I don't look fat, right?
Not at all.
Oh my God, the camera's on.
Oh. That's a good place to start. Okay. Hi, welcome back to our second episode of Site LA. I am Jill Moniz.
And I am Deb Clouden.
And today we're going to talk about vulnerability.
We sure are.
So I do want to say that as we evolve in this process and we recognize our vulnerability, we realize that our camera equipment was not up to snuff, and so we are back with new equipment, and
Hopefully you can hear us better. I am also working on projecting because I have been told that my voice is soft, which is something that I'm working on. Vulnerability, stepping into power, which is often more vulnerable when you're a woman, I think, than being conciliatory in your presentation.
And I have to say, and for honesty's sake, that we did take the second taping initially, but in that vulnerability, I realized that I was grotesque. We had to can it. It didn't go in the can, it went into the trash can.
You were so not grotesque.
You know, some of this conversation started when we both watched Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk on vulnerability, or on shame, which then led us to Brene Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability. Things that we had seen before, but in thinking about women in the art world and where we stand as small gallerists, you know, in the David and Goliath, you know, sort of tension with larger galleries. I thought it was really appropriate for us to revisit those ideas that were raised in those TED Talks and figure out how they relate to us and own both our vulnerability and make a pact that we will not give in to the self-shaming that we tend to do when we look at the success of these really large-scale galleries around us. Because I think we've been very successful in our programs, but we're in a new place.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And I think I would ask you in relation to that, and in relation to that topic, how does it resonate most for you in terms of vulnerability in our world?
Well, I think for me, I came into this without funders, without really a solid plan. I just had this impulse of what I thought was missing in Los Angeles. And so in creating this sort of practice space, or project space, you know, I thought that doing that would allow me to expose a vulnerability of the larger LA art scene and then heal it. Because as a mother, you know, you take care of things. And so I thought I would do this work and it would be better and people would instantly catch on and I would fill that hole and I could move on. And it turned out that I was much more vulnerable in that, both financially and just in the way that I watched other people exist in a space that always seems to be imbalanced and I won't say unfair because that's, you know, it's not a place of pity, but it's just this really unequal system. And I think that affects artists, that affects galleries, that affects the feeling and the space of creativity in Los Angeles. And that's something that I really worry about.
Absolutely. I was thinking today about a former collaborator of mine when I was in my 20s, and we were working on a creative project together. And at the time, the internet was relatively new, and there were a lot of different forums you could sign on to, but social media was not what it is now. And I kept suggesting that we go in and add our voices to these forums. And he said, no, we don't want to do that because the position of the greatest strength is actually not contributing to the conversation. And I think that, you know, that came up for me today as I was thinking about this topic because there is a tendency and a very sort of patriarchal, capitalist tendency to view opacity as power and vulnerability and openness, generosity as weakness,
right.
as making yourself, subject to the forces of your community as opposed to enacting upon them. And I think for both of us as women in the art world who put a very prime value on conversation and on openness as one of the most essential parts of what we do, I think that that does put us in a more vulnerable position.
Absolutely. And to relate to that, I got to a point, I guess maybe last year or early in 2019, where I decided I was going to lay my vulnerability out to people that I thought could help me. Yeah. And that kicked my teeth in. Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting that in approaching people that I thought I could trust, and who had said, if you ever need help, just call on me. And then when I did, it was like the worst kind of shaming, and it really stopped me in my tracks. And I think that with social media, we are in this era where everything is beautiful. Yeah. We now, even as gallerists who really are, and curators who are supposed to be behind the scenes, we live in this celebrity culture. Everyone has got to be gorgeous, and everyone has to have beautiful things, and beautiful shoes, and beautiful faces, and beautiful teeth, and everything has to be just right. Yeah. And there's no room anymore for vulnerability, imperfection, any of those things. And so when we expose ourselves, we are exposing ourselves absolutely. I mean, just stripping bare. It's like being naked in public. And I think, I used to think that there was something really vital about that, about owning that and then moving through it. But now I'm not so sure where I stand, because I am watching, as other galleries who have lots and lots of money and lots of patrons are moving over into program designs that mirror my own. Mm-hmm. So of course the writing is on the wall for me. And I find myself back in that kind of shaming spot, that if I had just done it better, then there would be no need, not that I feel like I have to be the only one, but to watch people do what I do as if I've not done it, even though I've made the space for it to exist, is a part of being vulnerable that really sucks.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, the art world asks you, requires that you fail over and over and over again. Sometimes I think that is, in fact, why there are so many women in the art world, in curatorial and gallerist positions, even if we are not the ones who get the most publicity and the most financing and all the rest of it, because if you are making yourself part of a community in that way, it requires a willingness to fail and resilience. But if you are not blessed with the kind of resources that many people have coming into the art world, it becomes a different kind of resilience that starts to require we ask harder questions about what the long-term goals are of this system, and how we want to get to a space where those long-term goals match up with our ideals.
Right. And what you're willing to sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And what you're not willing to sacrifice to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
So I think maybe this is a great time for us to table that conversation.
Yes.
And step back and work on ourselves a little bit more and our filming, and we will resume in episode 3.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.